We had our first lecture in the British Library. There wasn't any books that you could pick up and read as such, but I thought this was really clever because it didn't damage the books. It's a great example of interaction design. It was at the British Library I decided I wanted to do a picture book. And this is because I believe that words shouldn't be needed in design. I find it effective when a picture is good enough to tell its own story. In the British Library I came across lots of large religious and iconic books such as the Beatles collection. They had all sorts of books for different origins and religions, and a huge amount of copies of the Quran. This is the first book that I studied. It's called Your Child's Teeth. It's actually a non-fiction book, which surprised me. I actually thought it'd be a fiction book. It's very, very old. I think it's from the 1950s. And it's quite long. I don't know how they can actually write so much on children's teeth, but they've managed. And there's heaps of diagrams and things. It would be interesting to make a model out of, but I think it's quite limited, which brought me on to thinking that maybe a non-fiction book wasn't for me, because I prefer working with a creative term. I chose this book, Kill For Me, by Karen Rose, because I felt it was a horror book, and because it's a different genre, it would create a better final piece. I picked Harry Potter because it's a fantasy novel full of spells and terms which we wouldn't usually use. I chose this book thinking, what on earth could it possibly be about? It has such a random title, but after looking into it I found it's actually a really good story and has amazing reviews. I decided Charlie and the Chocolate Factory would be a great book to have as my final piece, because I know there's several editions of it, and also it's got so many chapters full of completely different storylines, and I knew that I could create a creative model out of it. I chose Somewhere Today by Bert Kitchen because it's a children's book, but the way it's written is really intelligent. Also it has amazing illustrations. I've deconstructed the book, putting things like the publisher, the author, illustrator, when it was first printed, and also I've written down some quotes, which I've noticed are mostly metaphors. For example, a chameleon is reaching out for its food. I thought this would be great to turn into a model. I've decided to base my final piece on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I've got 2 copies of the book. This is the chapter book version, illustrated by Quentin Blake. It's a lot longer than the picture book here I have, which is basically screen caps from the Warner Brothers Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie. During one of the lectures we were required to basically brainstorm possible models that we could make based on our book. This is the great glass elevator I've come up with, made of wire. Very quick 2-minute models. This is Augustus Gloop at the end of the chocolate pipe, and this is Mike TV's hat as seen in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. This is my deconstruction of the book Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I've started off with the publisher, Puffin Books, and then moved on to the author, Roald Dahl, and included some of the books that he's famously written before, such as the BFG, George's Marvellous Medicine and the Twits. I've then listed the chapters from the book. Some would make fantastic models, such as Square Sweets That Look Round, Veruca in the Nut Room and the Great Glass Lift. I've then moved on to the chapter book and the picture book, comparing the differences, such as the pictures and when they were both published. And here I've done some quotes from the book. For example, "You see, I haven't got it quite right yet," by Willy Wonka, and "The man is dotty," muttered Grandpa Josephine. "He's brilliant," cried Grandpa Joe. I've brainstormed ideas in which I could model from the book. Here is the boiled sweet boat. I've also got Augustus Gloop stuck in the chocolate pipe. Violet Beauregard as she turns into a blueberry and makes her swift exit. I've got the whole Veruca Salt fell down. I've got Hair Toffee, one of Willy Wonka's inventions. I've got a golden ticket, and also the gates to Willy Wonka's factory. I've moved on to possible media in which I could make the model out of, for example, clay, paper mache, card felt and funky foam. If I'm going to use clay, I'll remember not to use the standard biscuit stuff you get in school because it falls apart really easily. I've heard that terracotta is much better, much smoother and stronger.
Augustus Gloop, the great bakery nincompoop. Augustus Gloop, so big and vile, so greedy, foul and infantile. Come on, we cry, the time is right to send him shooting up the pipe.
But don't dare children be alarmed.
Augustus Gloop will not be harmed. Augustus Gloop will not be harmed.
So here's my Augustus Gloop stuck in the chocolate pipe. I've used all sorts of materials for my final piece, including clay, metal and plastic. It's extremely heavy because the majority of it's clay. The bottom here, meant to be the chocolate, is actually terracotta clay. I've also used pictures, as you can see, from both the chapter book and the picture book. For example, here I've got Augustus's face on top of the clay model. I felt that this gave a bit of a 3D effect whilst looking at it. I've used pictures of the characters, I've used their expressions as he's going up the chocolate pipe. And this is the back of my model, as you can see. I've put lyrics from the song in which the Oompa Loompas sing on Augustus Gloop's departure on the back of my tube. I thought that would be appropriate. And that concludes my presentation.